have the smallest of grocery hauls today because I went out with the intention of making one dish. I'm going to do a freezer restock of my dumplings. So I went to the Asian store and picked up the dumpling wrappers. I don't know anyone who makes their own wrappers by hand. I mean, I know how, but it is extraordinarily time consuming. So these are called 水饺 pastries. So literally it's just the wrappers. You can get wonton ones, but I prefer actual dumpling ones, round ones. 2 packets of these. I think they're about, $4.10 each. Pricier. I do prefer this brand to the other one. Aldi, $3.99 for 500 grams of pork mince. And a half cabbage. This was on sale, $1.99. I don't need all of it. 3 bananas, 2 punnets of tomatoes, snacking ones, a refill of milk, and a new jar of the minced garlic. So if you watch my cooking videos, you know that I basically use a teaspoon in everything. So I finally ran out of the other one, so new jar. It was a very small shop, but I will put my total on screen. So first I'm going to organize all of my ingredients. Most of this is just cupboard staples. Oyster sauce, soy sauce, sesame oil, mirin, sugar, garlic, ginger, and potato starch. Now I do prefer potato starch. If you don't have it, you can use corn flour. And I need about, to 500 grams of meat, about 200 grams of cabbage. So I'm going to deal with this first. So for the whites, the stems, the harder bits of the cabbage, I like to mince it a little bit more finely, and the leaves I cut up into larger pieces. So I'm going to continue just mincing away, and then I'll see you at the next step. Okay, so I ended up with about 350 grams of cabbage. I've just really cut it very finely. Some of the greens bigger than, obviously the whites, because it's firmer in texture. Again, you can replace this with wombok or Chinese cabbage, but it's not as firm in texture. I do like a firmer texture in the veg. And with my pork mince, I'm just going to mix it all together. So I put in about half of the cabbage so far, and I'm going to now add my seasonings. So it's 1 tablespoon of oyster sauce, 1 tablespoon of soy sauce, 1 tablespoon of sesame oil, 2 tablespoons of mirin. Next, it's 1 teaspoon of sugar, and 1 teaspoon of garlic and ginger each. The last thing to go into the mixture is 2 tablespoons of potato starch. So that's my mixture all done. As you can see, evenly spread with cabbage and pork and all of the condiments. I do like the flavor a little bit plain here because I make my own dipping sauce when I serve it. So now I'm going to wrap them. Okay, now it's time to wrap my dumplings. So what you need is a small bowl of water, a damp cloth or tea towel just to keep these ones still flexible, otherwise they will dry out. I've got my mixture to the side here, and I like to do a big batch at a time and freeze them. So I'm going to just put them directly into my large containers off to the side. The instructions say to add in 1 teaspoon of stuffing, and I agree, it's really quite deceptive. 1 teaspoon will be good enough just to throw in your filling, otherwise you run the risk of overstuffing. Now, there are various methods of folding and stuffing, so some people like to just close it in a half circle here, a semicircle here. I like to pleat mine, so I'll show you how I do mine. Wet the edges. Push and pleat, push and pleat, push and pleat, push and pleat. And that's how I fold my dumplings. So I'm gonna put it off in my little container here. One more time. Now I've had years of practice, so I tend to put a little bit more than a teaspoon. Plus, you know, I like to eat it, so I like a lot of filling. So wet the edges. Push with your thumb here, pleat as you go. Push and pleat and hold and press down as you pleat. I also push the filling with my finger as I push it along. But if you put an actual teaspoon, you won't have to push the filling down. And then afterwards, I just put it on the board just to kind of even the mixture out a little bit. And I, again, make sure my pleats are closed at the top, sealed. And because the way I like to cook them, I like to pan fry mine a lot. So I like a little bit of a flatter bottom. But because these literally say 水饺, 水 is water. 饺 being dumpling, the shape. You can then boil these as well. So, yeah. So dumplings can then be boiled or deep fried. I like to fry mine. So I will speed you through the process. Sometimes I find that when they manufacture these, because they put flour on them to stop them sticking from each other, I find that it gets just a little bit too floury. If you have a pastry brush, you can brush it off. Simply because, you know, your water does get really starchy. Do change out the water every now and then. But, you know, just with dry hands, I like to just brush a lot of it off. It also stops the water from being really, really starchy when you boil them as well. So... As you can see, dumpling making is a bit of an involved process. The tradition is to, you know, gather the family and do it all together. I remember as a kid, my mother, my grandmother, and my aunts would get together and it would be a whole day of it. My job was to scoop the filling onto people's wrappers. Now, when I was a kid, my family, specifically my aunt, made the wrappers by hand from from scratch. I do not have the patience, and quite frankly, neither does my mother. My mum thinks I'm insane for doing this by hand, but I'm picky and I don't like the frozen ones in the stores. My favorite brand, they've recently shut down this year, so, you know, because I am picky, I like my own flavoring, and I don't particularly like Chinese chives, which is like the main ingredient in most frozen Asian store dumplings. I have to make my own. So that's my first dozen wrapped. Hopefully, oh, I'll move that up. Here we go. So I like to just freeze them as they go, and I keep them in my freezer pretty much permanently. So as one batch goes, I probably will use both packets. So I will get this in the freezer and work on the next box. We had a casualty. I was brushing the excess flour off, and I was kind of doing it over the sink when I had the doorbell go off, and I kind of dropped it in the sink and it got wet. Oh, when it is completely wet, by the way, there's no salvaging it. So just discard your pastry sheet. Yeah, it'll stick together, it'll tear, so there's no coming back from that. So I also have fresh water. Again, you know, dipping your finger in, it gets really starchy. So I'm going to continue mixing, mix this up a bit. And I'm going to show you one more time how I fold it. So a teaspoon of filling goes in. A bit more if you like. Wet the edges. Fold it in half. I mean, you could just seal it like that. I like to pinch with my thumb here firmly, push with this hand, fold and pinch, push, fold and pinch, push, fold and pinch. Then I like to use my index finger just to squeeze down the filling a little bit, push, fold and pinch, and I use my thumb to kind of keep where I want the next pleat to be. So push and pinch, push and pinch, and pinched to the end. Then I like to put it on the board just to distribute the filling. Now, with this, you can go back with a little bit of water and stick it if you so choose, but I feel like, you know, as long as you've got that firm seal along the edge, you'll be fine. Remember, if you're boiling it and if you don't have a firm seal, then it'll explode and it'll come out. That's also the other reason why you don't want to fill it too much in this, because if you put it in water, it'll expand and then kaboom. Okay, so this is my second dozen done. I don't think you want to sit here and watch me wrap the rest of them, given that I have 2 packets. So I just wanted to show you up close from the back. Make sure you have that seal on it, no matter how you wrap it. Even if you decide just to fold it in half, make sure you press down very firmly on that. If you can hold it to the light, you can obviously see where your filling ends. So you just don't want it too close to the edge again, because when it cooks, it'll expand. This one's a bit of an ugly one, but we'll ignore that. So I will see you when I finish wrapping, and I'll show you how many this whole recipe yields. Every now and then, just give your mixture a stir. If you're not very confident in wrapping, I would actually put half of this in the fridge, just with cling wrap over the top. It's not a hot day by any stretch today, so it's actually quite cool, so that's why I'm okay with leaving meat here on the counter as I go along. Another way of filling the dumplings is just to portion out your teaspoon into the wrappers and then just go along and wet the edges and wrap them all at once. Again, you know, I wouldn't recommend having all that many out at one time, but again, I've had decades of practice to do this. So I'm just going to finish wrapping them and then we'll count up how many I have. I'm going to wrap the last 5 in real time just to show you kind of what speed you can get up to. I'm not the fastest, but ideally you don't really have them out because they will dry out. But some of you may be more dexterous than I am, so you know, you guys might be able to get this down, and especially if you don't pleat them, it is much easier to obviously not pleat them. But for the aesthetics, you know, I like them like this. So that's me done. Yeah, by the end of it, you could feel it starting to get harder. The wrapper does start to harden a little bit. It is very soft and delicate. So again, you know, do one at a time. It is annoying. Ideally, you do keep it covered with some kind of wet tea towel. I still have a couple left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 skins left, plus my sacrifice one that went down the sink. So 6. So in total, with 6 skins left, so 32 pieces per pack, so 64 minus 6 is 58. So I've made 58 dumplings today with my 500 grams of pork. I traditionally do like 100 at a time, but I'm pretty time poor right now. So these will go into my freezer. They don't take very long to firm up in the freezer. I do like to kind of stack them single when I freeze them so that they retain the shape, otherwise they'll squish. You can obviously cook them right out of, you know, frozen as well as from fresh. They're obviously nicer fresh, but you know, it's pretty much mid-afternoon for me, so I'm going to just freeze them and then I will show you how I cook them. Summer is upon us and it is hotter than Hades outside, so I am not venturing outside. I'm going to be eating out of my freezer tonight, so I've pulled out my pork dumplings. Now, I last made these at least 3 months ago, so you're watching this immediately, hopefully, in the video. But I thought I would cook them up for dinner, and I've got soybeans, edamame, which I'm just going to reheat in boiling water with a bit of salt. So these have been in my freezer since I made them. They hold up really well in the freezer, and obviously, as you can see, I just dump it in a box after freezing them in layers. They keep their shape quite well. Now, to make these, I'm going to pan fry these tonight, I think. So I'm going to make a cornstarch slurry. About a teaspoon of cornstarch. And I'm going to add water to this. So how I like to cook my dumplings is I'm going to make them 煎饺, which means fried. I lay them flat. As you can see, I made them with flat bottoms in a fry pan or a wok with a bit of oil. Fry it for a minute, and then you have to add water until about halfway up the dumpling. Then you put the lid on the top of the fry pan or your wok or whatever, you steam it until all of the water is gone. So I like to have my bottoms a little bit crispy, which is why I do like to add a bit of cornstarch. You can skip the cornstarch and just add the water in. Anyway, cook until all of the water is gone, and then the bottoms will be brown. Then you serve it up, and I'll show you a sauce afterwards. Let's go to the stove. Okay, so that cooked for about 10 minutes. Obviously, just flip the bottoms to check when, it's brown, just for that little crispy bottom. Of course, you can just steam these regularly or boil them. I like a little bit of texture because it's crunchy down the bottom and soft up the top. So I'm going to make a quick dipping sauce to go with this. What it is equal parts soy sauce to equal parts black vinegar, and then a teeny tiny splash. We're talking like 2-3 shakes of sesame oil. It's very potent. And I like to add some Szechuan pepper into mine. I've run out of chili oil. I have for a long time, and again, I'm not going out. So I'll just make up the sauce. I also added 1 pinch of sugar to the sauce. So you can use this as a dipping sauce or pour it over. I'm going to bite into the dumpling just to show you the filling. So very crispy on the bottoms and very soft on the top. So again, that's the pork and the cabbage filling. Hopefully you can see. either way, I'm gonna have my dinner now, and I've got my edamame beans, and I'm gonna eat them just with a little bit more salt. I know this was a very long video, but I do hope you give these a go, because these are really, really, really tasty. And they're really, really economical to make. All right, bye.